What is up, guys? It's Ira from One to Pass here, and today I'm going to do my Murakumo deck profile. So I just recently started playing this deck. It's really fun, and it's really powerful with G-set free. So anyways, let's get started off with Starting Vanguard. Starting Vanguard is the Chain Cycle Stealth Rogue Onifundo. So Onifundo's a Generation Break 1, so his timing resolves during the main phase. So you can Soul Blast 1 and then return this card to your hand. You look at the top 3 superior, call one of them. At the end of the turn, you can return that. You have to return that unit to the bottom of your deck. So it's basically like a free unit, so it's fairly good. For only Soul Blast 1, you don't really use Soul in this deck, so it's a really solid starter. Only one copy because I don't really like the concept of double starter in this deck. If it dies, then it's just whatever, right? So it's a very solid starting Vanguard. Don't need the Great Fleet Searcher because I don't feel like it's needed in this deck. Next up, I run 4 copies of Shirayuki. So Shirayuki's ability is Limit Break 4. You can Persona Blast, Counterblast 1, Persona Blast. When someone attacks Shirayuki, then you can Persona Blast and minus 20,000 to that attacking unit. So it's really good because it's basically a 20,000k shield in your hand as a grade 3, which is really solid. That's really defensive. There's also ways to be able to fetch Shirayuki from the deck, so it's really good. Also, it gets around skills like Glory Maelstrom, Silent Tom. So overall, it's a fairly good card. It's not really the main focus of the deck, but it's like more of an alternative ride and alternate playstyle depending on what kind of deck you play against. So 4 copies, sure. And then I'm gonna run 4 copies of Yasuie. So Yasuie is the Break Stride unit from Murakumo's, and he's a pretty solid card overall. So his Break Stride skill is when you stride, you can choose one of your rear guards and then superior call 2 copies with the same name as that unit to separate rear guards, and then you shuffle your deck. So at the end of the turn, you need to put those units back at the bottom of the deck. So that's basically Murakumo's main gimmick, if you will. So that's really solid. Basically, you'll always want one unit to be on the rear guard when you use this card's ability. And then his Generation Break 2 is once per turn, when a rear guard is put to the bottom of your deck, you can search your... When it's put into the deck due to the effect of the card, you can search your deck for one card with the same name as that unit, and then call it back to rear guard. So instead of the card going back, it permanently stays there, so it's pretty interesting. It's pretty good. Yeah, because, I mean, considering that you can call... With Onifundo especially, like, the synergy is like... Unit goes back into your deck, you can just superior call it back. So it's pretty solid overall. But usually the Generation Break 2 doesn't really go off that much, so it's not something you have to really worry about. Yasuie is mainly used for a Break Stride skill to synergize with one of the strides, which I'll explain later, but the synergy is really good. It's a really solid card, because, I mean, getting 2 units for one counterblast is just crazy, right? And then I run 4 copies of Stealth Dragon Runestar. So Runestar is a Generation Break 1. When he's boosted, you can superior call a copy of him, and at the end of the turn, that copy has to return to your hand. So, it's really good. You can get multi-attacks off, and then at the end of the turn, you always get one and an extra copy back to your hand. So you +1, and then you can call copies. And calling copies is really good in Murakumo, especially with the G-Break support, which I will showcase later. Yeah. And then 3 copies of the 12k attacker. It's mainly to be able to make lines. He can also attack by himself, so it's really strong. This build is a bit more aggressive than your usual like Shirayuki build. It's more of a Yasuie-centered build, honestly, but the 12k attackers really help you make lines, so it's a really solid choice, I feel. And then I run 4 copies of Fujino. So Fujino is when another copy of her is placed on the rear guard, then this card gets plus 2,000, and when it attack hits, then you kind of flip with damage. So this ability actually stacks too, so you can already start to see this shenanigans you can do Yasuie. Like, you have 1 copy here, and then you superior call 2 copies. The way simultaneous abilities works, this one will get plus 4 and 2 on flips, and these 2 would both get plus 2 and then on flip, since they all hit the board at the same time, but you resolve their abilities one by one. So, yep, Fujino is really solid because it really gives pressure with the mechanic of Murakumo. Then I run 4 Perfect Guards. So this is Unflipping Perfect Guard, and the unflipping damage is actually kind of necessary because aside from this, you don't really have any way to conserve your counterblast. And your main triple rare stride boss is really counterblast heavy, so yep, White Heron's really solid choice overall. Helps you conserve your counterblast. You don't really need to protect rear guards because you're not going to have rear guards to protect, honestly, so that's not big of a deal. And then I run 2 copies of the Stride Enabler, so this one can search Yasuie if you call him, and then you reveal grade 3, ditch 1, and then he also counts +2 in hand for Stride. Nothing really much to say about that. It's really standard to play, but the reason why I run 2 is because I need 4 copies of 2 other grade 1s, so it's not really worth playing 4 copies of this. And then I run 4 copies of Charcoal Fox. So Charcoal Fox is honestly like a really, really good card, because when he is placed on rearguard, then all other copies of Charcoal Fox, including himself, get +2000. It's a Generation Break 1 ability. But it's basically, if any of you guys play duos, you'll immediately be reminded of Dual Beast Ear Lolo. So this can really stack really hard, because if you place 2 of them on at the same time, then all copies become 11k. So, and then usually what will happen is you have 1 copy already there, and then you call 2 copies of Yasuie, and the last one you might have in hand, or you can call it with another means, but it can hit pretty insane lines, pushing your lines over like 21 easily. And also more shenanigans with one of the key strides that I'll explain a bit later. So it's a really good card overall. And then, yeah, I'm sorry about the resolution. It's just really fuzzy because, yeah, I don't know, my camera's kind of crappy. But then I run 4 copies of Lake Divers. So Lake Divers GB1 is when he's placed on rearguard, you can counterblast 1, and then search your deck for another 2 copies of Lake Diver, call them, and then at the end of the turn, those copies need to go back to the deck. It's pretty crazy. I mean, you just call one, and then you suddenly have an entire back line, so yeah, it's really good backup, like in the case that you don't hit Yasuie, and then you don't have any rear guards because your opponent retired everything, so you just call Lake Diver, you suddenly have a whole full back row, or just another, like, it's 3 units for 1 card and a counterblast, so like, there's nothing, there's no questioning like playing this. It's just really good overall. It's a really nice solid backup. And then for triggers, I run 3 of the stand triggers. So this one's a Generation Break 1. When he's placed on rearguard, doesn't specify from hand or from deck, so you can do it from deck. Sometimes I stack this card with Onifundo. It's really stupid. So this card is really dumb. When you place on rearguard, you can choose 2 of your other rearguards, not named Hidden Scroll, and then you can search your deck for 2 copies of that card and call them to rearguard, and then shuffle your deck. And at the end of the turn, those obviously have to go back to the bottom of your deck. But this is really crazy because, like, you can just get 2 units for 1, and then, oh man. I really have to explain the strides, because the strides really make the deck work. But Hidden Scroll like, really puts in work, because the stands are actually decent in Murakumo, plus, yeah, I mean, this card's ability is really solid. Definitely one of the better stand triggers I've seen out there. And then I run 4 crit triggers. So this crit is just your soul charge plus free to something. Soul's not really too relevant unless you want to spam Onifundo more. Plus 3000 is always nice. Having effect triggers is always good, because if you play against witches, haha. And then I run 3 more crit triggers, so that makes a total of 7 crits. And then I run the 2 draw. The 2 draws are just there, help a bit with hand size, and it's a good defensive trigger to check. So 7-3-2 is one of my, I really like this kind of split, because it really does work very well. And then finally, of course, 4 heals, because, you know, you need heal triggers. So that's it for the main deck. So it's really hard to see how this works together, because the strides are honestly very crucial to the deck. So I'll start off with, I guess, I will start off with the most important stride. So this guy is Kagamijishi. So I probably butchered that name. But when his ability is when your unit is placed on a rear guard, if you have 2 or more other copies of that unit, then wait, 2 or more units with the same name. Yeah, so I don't think it counts itself. I need to double check that, but that unit gets plus 2000, and then it can attack from back row. So Like, it is possible to get 6 attacks off in a turn. I've done it before. It's really nasty. Like, these attacks are all going to be at least 9 to 11, so your opponent needs to, like, expend, like, 5 cards from hand to guard it. So if they don't check a defensive trigger, they're basically screwed with this card. It really pressures your opponent really quickly. The whole goal of this deck is really the hit and run idea, but the reason why it's so strong is because you still have, like, defensive cards to protect yourself. So overall, it's a really crazy card. I run 2 copies because 2 copies is all you'll ever need. If you somehow need to use a third one, then it's just, I don't know. You don't ever need to use that many. I will double check the ability because it's not very clear, right? Because it says when your unit's placed on rearguard, if you have 2 or more units with the same name, because it doesn't say 2 or more other units, so yeah, no. That means if you just place one and place another, then the other one can already attack from back row, so that's kind of stupid. I didn't know that. Today I learned. But it's usually irrelevant, so it's not too big of a deal. And then I run 2 copies of Cosmetic Snowfall Shirayuki. So Shirayuki's ability is when you place when she's placed on the Vanguard Circle, you can choose one of your hearts, search your deck for a copy of it, Superior call it. If your heart is Shirayuki, then at the end of your turn, you put that card in your hand, and then you discard a card. Otherwise, if it is not Shirayuki, then you just put it back to the bottom of your deck. So it either gives you another attacker, or it lets you add Shirayuki copies to your hand for her Persona Blast, or just to help you cycle strides over. So it's just a very nice card. It's really strong with Shirayuki, but it's also decent with Yasuie. Like, if you don't have a field, then this is pretty decent with Yasuie, but yeah. Overall, it's pretty good utility. It works very well with Shirayuki. It just gives me some options. And finally, the star of the deck, and of course, in Home Run sleeves is Home Run Raider. So Home Run Raider is like one of your finishing cards. Honestly, you can use this guy as a finishing card as well, but Home Run Raider is a really solid finisher. And it even conserves your hand if you play it correctly. So Home Run Raider's ability is you counterblast 2, you unflip a copy of this in your generation zone, and then if you have 2 or more face up, then it gets this ability. So it's -1 drive check, and then when you attack, after it attacks, you can return 3 cards with the same name to the bottom of your deck, and then you shuffle your deck. Then you get to stand this unit. So it's basically like a Victoplasma, except instead of discarding 2, you return 3 cards with the same name. So it's basically Raging Form Dragon minus the Persona Reride. Actually, no, more accurately, it's actually Phantom Blaster Avenger Abyss, except you're not retiring, and it goes to the bottom. It goes back to your deck. It's really solid. I mean, Restanding Vanguard, it's really good to help finish the game off. Plus, you get to put copies back into your deck. So theoretically, actually, I think it says it's not normal. It doesn't specify normal trigger units. So in theory, you could return 3 heal triggers to your deck and shuffle it. Well, of course, that's not going to happen that often, but hey, I mean, you can do it, right? So 4 copies, obviously, because sometimes you do need to restand twice to kill them, but honestly, it's a really heavy counterblast cost, which is why I play Fujino and White Heron for the Unflipping Perfect card. So overall, it's really solid restander. I don't always need to use this, but usually the first one will kill them because I will have used Kaken Majishi to push them to either 4 or 5 damage, and then this just finishes them off. Usually you want to use this when they're at high damage or when you need more drive checks to be able to cycle for your deck. So it's a really solid card. I really like that concept. It's really, I feel like Bushiroad did a pretty decent job with the Murakumo support. I'm actually pretty happy with how it turned out. It's quite underrated, and I recently just toppled this deck, so it's not like it's terrible. It's really good. It's a really good deck. The only problem I see with it is that you're leaving your rearguard circles open a lot, which leaves you very prone to, I don't know, Phantom Blaster Diablo. So yeah, that's probably the only weakness of this deck, which is probably why I would not play it at a big tournament where everyone's playing the metagame, i.e. Diablo. Yeah. Just having to deal with that deck, honestly, makes this deck a bit less viable. Like, I know you can... Probably in that matchup, you would want to sit on Shirayuki, and then actually build a field. But then that means you pretty much can't use Homura Raider or Kagamajishi very well. You need to basically play very defensive and grind heavy. And it's not a very good grind deck, trust me. You do conserve a lot of your hand by playing this correctly, but it's not. It was never meant to be a defensive deck. So, yeah. Yeah. Overall, the combos. This combo is honestly just dumb. This combined with this, and either Charcoal Fox or Fujino. Like, it is just absolutely brutal. You have to deal with like 5 to 6 attacks. And then you hit stand triggers. Yeah, I've done that before. I feel really bad for the guy, but like I had like 3 copies of these, and then I hit double stands, so it was pretty nasty because he had to deal with like 6 or 7 attacks. I can't remember, but yeah, overall, it's a really fun deck. Highly recommend it. It's really cheap to build too, surprisingly, because, you know, when you're not riding the meta, then stuff becomes a lot cheaper, actually. So yeah, thanks for watching this deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed. I tried to make it shorter this time, but clearly it's still kind of a bit long. So yeah, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.